In this problem, we're going to look at graph transformations. Here is a problem from MyMathLab that says begin by graphing the absolute value function f of x equals the absolute value of x. Then use transformations of this graph to graph the given function g of x equals the negative absolute value of the quantity x minus 4 minus 1. And it gives us these choices of transformations, and we need to select all that apply. So I need to analyze my function. I need a little bit more room, so I've rewritten it over here. Here's my function, and I need to figure out the transformations I apply to the absolute value of x that turn it into g of x. So initially, you see there is a negative outside the absolute value. This is the same as having a negative 1 outside the absolute value. And when you multiply by a negative 1, it's always a reflection. Anything you do outside is vertical. So this is a vertical reflection. And when I vertically reflect things from up here to down here, it reflects across the x-axis. So multiplying by a negative 1 outside the function is a vertical reflection in the x-axis. The next thing to look at is this minus 4 inside the function. So I have x minus 4 inside my absolute value. Anything inside the function is horizontal. When you add and subtract numbers, it's a shift. So this is a horizontal shift. And be careful with horizontal shifts. Minus 4 is not going to shift it to the left. It's going to shift it to the right 4 units. So x minus 4 inside the absolute value, horizontal shift to the right. And then lastly, I have this minus 1 outside the function. It's added, you're adding and subtracting numbers, so it's going to be a shift, but it's outside the function, so it's going to be a vertical shift. And vertical shifts are very logical. Minus 1 is going to shift it down 1 unit. When you have multiple transformations, it's very important you do them in the correct order. We always do horizontal shifts first. We always do vertical shifts last, and that means the vertical reflection comes in the middle. So we're going to shift it to the right 4 units first. Then we're going to vertically reflect it in the x-axis, and finally we're going to vertically shift it down 1 unit. So let's go back and look at MyMathLab. And we have to pick the transformations we need. So remember, the first thing was a horizontal shift. Well, another word for shift is translation, so I definitely need a horizontal translation. Then I had a vertical reflection in the x-axis, so it's this one here, not this one here. So I have a vertical reflection about the x-axis. And then finally I had my vertical shift, so it's a vertical translation. So those are the 3 translations I need. So let me check my answer. That part worked. And now I have to pick the graph. To do that, I just want to show you an applet that shows you how to get the actual graph. So let's go to the applet. I'm going to start out with the graph of f of x equals the absolute value of x. So here is my parent graph. Now I want to graph g of x. I'm going to start out with g of x being the parent graph. So here is g of x. It's graphed over the red parent graph. The first transformation I needed to do was to shift my graph 4 units to the right. So there is my graph shifted 4 units to the right. And you can now see the equation is the absolute value of the quantity x minus 4 inside the absolute value. Now I need to reflect it across the x-axis. So there's a vertical reflection across the x-axis, and that comes from multiplying the function by a -1 outside the function. And lastly, we needed to shift our graph down 1 unit. So here is my final graph of g of x equals the negative absolute value of x minus 4 minus 1. So this is the graph that we need to look for in the MyMathLab answers. So let's go back to MyMathLab. So now we know what the graph looks like. It definitely has a vertical reflection, so it's either A or D. And we just have to be careful. This, remember, said it goes to the right 4 and down 1. Does this one look like it went to the right 4 and down 1? That looks correct, but let's just double check. This one here and this one here went right 1 and down 4. So definitely A is the correct answer. So we're going to check our answer, and we got it right. So that is how you do problems like this in MyMathLab.